I'm cheating with your best friend, and there's nothing you can do about it. Those were the exact words that left Amelia's lips, calm, cold, and final, as she stood by the marble kitchen counter of their Chicago penthouse. Her voice didn't tremble, her eyes didn't flinch. They glistened with the same quiet arrogance of a woman who believed she had already won. Across from her, Marcus Grant, her husband of 7 years, sat frozen. The steam from his untouched coffee curled upward between them like smoke from a battlefield. The words hadn't just hit him, they detonated inside him. And yet, even in that moment, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam his fist or break a glass. He simply looked at her the way a man looks at a stock report he doesn't yet understand. Silent, calculating, trying to see what he'd missed. Marcus wasn't just a husband, he was a man built from quiet resilience. Once a promising automotive engineer who'd left his job at Titan Motors to start a small consulting firm, he had worked countless nights building a company that kept other people's businesses alive when markets crashed. He wasn't flashy, but every decision was measured, every success earned, and every betrayal felt. But Amelia didn't see that anymore. Somewhere between their candlelit anniversaries and her recent obsession with luxury circles, she had traded contentment for status. And standing before him now, she looked less like the woman he married and more like the version of herself that the city had shaped. Designer dress, manicured nails, and the phone that buzzed twice before she silenced it. Too quickly, he noticed. The name that flashed across her screen, Evan, his best friend, his best man. The man who once toasted at their wedding saying, "Marcus, you've got the kind of love most men only dream of." Marcus stared at the phone as Amelia tucked it into her purse like a loaded weapon she no longer needed to hide. "You heard me," she said, her tone steady. "I'm not sorry, and there's nothing you can do. You were too slow, too boring, too predictable. Evan knows what I need." But behind her confidence was something else, an unspoken fear, because Marcus didn't look defeated. He didn't beg, didn't plead, didn't even ask why. He only whispered, "I see." Those two words unsettled her more than any argument could, because 7 years ago, when she'd first met him in that rain-soaked diner near Lincoln Park, Marcus had whispered the same phrase right before he turned a failing mechanic shop into one of Chicago's most profitable automotive tech ventures. Back then, he was the man who saw opportunities where others saw ruin. And now, sitting quietly as his wife announced her betrayal, that same glint had returned to his eyes. But Amelia couldn't read it. "Don't look at me like that," she snapped. "You think you can fix this? You can't fix us. You lost me a long time ago." Marcus leaned back, fingers interlaced. His voice was low, almost soothing. "Maybe. But tell me something, Amelia. Why now?" "Because I'm done living small," she said, each word laced with pride. "Evan has influence, connections. He's helping me step into the kind of life I deserve. You had your chance, Marcus. You chose your company, your dreams, your stupid contracts over me. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was far uglier. The truth was that Amelia had grown addicted to admiration, the kind that came from other men's eyes, from designer champagne lounges, from luxury labels whispering validation. Evan was simply the easiest access point to that world. Marcus studied her like an investor studying a volatile market. He didn't react, but the silence felt heavy, purposeful, like he was writing something down in his mind. Finally, he stood, adjusting his cufflinks, an old habit from his corporate days. "You're right," he said quietly. "There's nothing I can do to stop you." He started toward the door, paused, then added, "But remember, Amelia, every action has an investor, and every investor wants returns." She frowned. "What does that even mean?" He smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon." As the door clicked shut behind him, the chill in the penthouse deepened. She exhaled, thinking he'd finally broken. But deep down, something gnawed at her, the realization that Marcus never lost his temper. And when Marcus didn't lose his temper, it usually meant he was planning something. Later that night, as she slipped into Evan's Mercedes on Michigan Avenue, laughing over wine and false promises, she glanced back at the skyline. Somewhere behind those glowing towers, Marcus was still awake, still calm, still watching the pieces move. Because Marcus Grant wasn't just a husband betrayed, he was a strategist, one who understood leverage better than love, timing better than trust. And when the woman he once called his world declared war, he didn't fight back with anger. He fought back with silence, the kind that comes before the storm. But what kind of man doesn't flinch when his wife admits she's cheating with his best friend? What kind of husband walks away without a single tear, a single question? And what was he planning that would soon make Amelia realize, too late, that there was something he could do, and it would crush her forever? The next morning, Chicago woke under a silver dawn that shimmered across glass towers and quiet streets. But inside Marcus Grant's office on the 42nd floor of Lincoln Financial Plaza, the air was thick with purpose. The same man Amelia had mocked as boring now sat behind a walnut desk, eyes fixed on a screen of confidential financial data streaming across multiple monitors. The reflection of those numbers painted his face in cold light, revenge through calculation. Amelia didn't know that Marcus's so-called small consulting firm wasn't small at all. Over the years, he'd quietly transformed it into a network of holdings spread across tech, finance, and real estate. Through shell companies and layered subsidiaries, he owned silent stakes in companies that controlled contracts Evan's firm desperately needed. Evan thought he was negotiating with random investment partners. He was, in fact, negotiating with Marcus. As the city stirred awake, Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from his operations chief, Jordan Blake, a loyal friend from his early Titan Motors days. Audit complete. Evans Group owes us $3.4 million in delayed payments. Would you like to enforce Clause 9C? Marcus smiled faintly. Clause 9C, a legal trap written years ago, allowing immediate takeover rights of a partner's assets if payments defaulted beyond 60 days. Evan was 63 days late. He typed a single word, execute. Downstairs, the lobby hummed with executives sipping espresso, unaware that a quiet storm was forming 42 floors above. To the world, Marcus was just a consultant. To those who knew the truth, he was a financial architect, one who preferred revenge not through confrontation, but through contracts. He leaned back in his chair, mind drifting to a flashback, the day Evan had first introduced him to Amelia. It was summer, years ago, when Marcus was still living in a modest apartment and Evan had dragged him to a company barbecue. Amelia had arrived in a sundress, laughing too loud, charming everyone. Evan had whispered, "She's trouble, but the kind that makes life interesting." Marcus hadn't listened to the warning. Now, years later, Evan was the trouble, and Amelia had chosen to walk into it willingly. Jordan entered the office quietly, placing a file on the desk. Transfer complete. By end of day, Evans Group's core assets, 3 subsidiaries, including their prime logistics contract, will be under Grant Holdings control. Marcus nodded, expression calm, voice low. Good. Make sure Evan gets the notice personally. I want it hand-delivered. Jordan hesitated. You sure you want to hit him this fast? The merger will go public. That's the point, Marcus replied. Let him celebrate his new relationship. Then let the city learn he just lost everything while he was busy playing house. A faint flicker of satisfaction crossed his face. Not gloating, not rage, just the grim calm of a man returning balance to a tilted scale. Across town in a downtown cafe with gold-tinted windows, Amelia sat opposite Evan, stirring her latte like a queen waiting for a crown. Marcus signed the papers, she lied. He looked pathetic, honestly. I almost felt sorry for him. Evan smirked. He'll bounce back. Guys like him always do, quietly. Anyway, I've got good news. My firm's expansion deal just cleared. We'll have enough liquidity to move into the new offices by next month. Maybe then we'll make our relationship public. Amelia's eyes lit up. Finally, I can't wait to start over. But that night, as Evan scrolled through his inbox, a new message arrived from a law firm he'd never heard of. Notice of acquisition. Grant Holdings. His eyes froze on the letterhead. The language was unmistakable. As per Clause 9C, effective immediately, control and operational authority of Evans Group is hereby transferred to Grant Holdings Incorporated. He read it again and again. Then he noticed the signatory. Marcus E. Grant. His heart pounded. He called Amelia instantly. You need to tell me something, he said, voice shaking. Did you know who Marcus really is? What are you talking about? He owns Grant Holdings, the company that just bought mine. Silence, then a faint, nervous laugh. That's impossible. Marcus runs a small firm. Evan exhaled sharply. No, Amelia. He runs the city. The phone slipped from her hand. For the first time, fear pierced through her composure. Her reflection in the cafe window didn't look confident anymore. It looked cornered. Back in his office, Marcus watched the live market feed as Evans Group stock froze mid-trade. He wasn't done, not yet. Revenge wasn't about destruction, it was about education. He wanted Amelia to understand the cost of arrogance. He closed his laptop and stood by the window, staring down at the lights of Chicago. His reflection merged with the city skyline. A man once mocked as average, now controlling the fate of those who betrayed him. Jordan's voice broke the silence. You think she'll find out it was you? She will, Marcus said, but not today. Let her sleep beside a man who's just lost everything and doesn't know it yet. He turned off the lights, the office sinking into shadow. Outside, a light rain began to fall. Quiet, precise, cleansing. The kind of rain that erased footprints, but never memory. Because for Marcus, this wasn't revenge for betrayal. This was balance being restored. But what would Amelia do when she woke up to find her lover bankrupt, her lifestyle slipping through her manicured fingers? And what deeper truth about Marcus's wealth, and her own role in building it, was about to surface next? Amelia woke up to the soft hum of Evan's penthouse air conditioner and the faint tremor of his pacing footsteps. The sun had barely breached the skyline, but tension already filled the room like static. Evan's phone glowed on the nightstand, notifications streaming in one after another. Contracts terminated, funds frozen, partnership revoked. What's going on? She murmured, sitting up, her silk robe sliding off one shoulder. Evan didn't answer at first. He was too busy scrolling, each line of text cutting deeper than the last. It's Marcus, he muttered finally, voice trembling. Your husband, your ex, he's behind this. Everything I built, everything I own, he just took it. She laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. Evan, come on, Marcus doesn't have that kind of power. He fixes contracts, not companies. Evan spun around, eyes red, voice raw. You think this is a coincidence? He used a shell company to buy controlling shares of mine. The paperwork traces back to Grant Holdings, and do you know who's on the board? Marcus, your husband. The man you said was broke. The color drained from her face. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. The memory of Marcus's last words came back. Every action has an investor, and every investor wants returns. He hadn't meant it metaphorically. He had meant it literally. Evan threw his phone on the couch. I'm finished, Amelia. My accounts are frozen, the merger's dead, and my staff's walking out. You think anyone will hire me again after this? Calm down, we'll fix it. There is no we, he snapped, running his hands through his hair. You told me to leave my fiancé, to go public with you, and now my life's in ruins. Amelia flinched, her voice breaking. I didn't know he could do this. Evan gave a hollow laugh. You should have known. You were married to him. Didn't you ever wonder why your lifestyle never crashed, even when his company supposedly struggled? The man's not poor, he's dangerous. She turned toward the window, staring at the skyline that once made her feel untouchable. Now the view mocked her. The same towers she flaunted on social media, those glimmering proofs of success, were reflections of Marcus's empire, not hers. A sudden flashback gripped her. The night Marcus stayed up late drafting contracts while she scrolled through online boutiques. She'd mocked his diligence, called it obsession. You don't even know how to live, she had said. He'd smiled faintly and replied, You don't know what living costs. Now she understood. Her phone rang. Her sister, Clara. Amelia answered quickly, desperate for some semblance of stability. Amelia, what happened? Clara's voice came sharp with worry. Your accounts, Dad's business loan, everything's frozen. The bank said it's connected to a portfolio audit under your husband's name. Amelia's stomach twisted. That's impossible. Marcus doesn't handle my family's finances. Clara hesitated. He did. Remember the trust fund paperwork last year? The ones you asked him to temporarily manage while you were in Paris? It's all under his signature. He froze the accounts yesterday. Amelia's voice cracked. Oh my God! The room tilted. Every arrogant word she'd ever thrown at Marcus echoed in her head, each one like a brick in the walls closing around her. She had mocked his patience, laughed at his humility, and compared him to men who only existed in her imagination. Now the man she'd discarded was rewriting her reality. Evan grabbed his jacket, muttering, I need to meet my lawyer. She reached for him. Please don't go. We can figure this out together. He jerked his arm free. Figure this out? Amelia, you ruined me. You think Marcus just wants me broke? No, he's dismantling everything you touch. You were just the messenger, and I was the lesson. The door slammed behind him, leaving her alone in a silence thick with dread. Hours later, she drove to the one place that still felt familiar, the old penthouse she once shared with Marcus. She had the spare key, though her pride made her hesitate before using it. The place smelled faintly of him, cedarwood and calm control. His desk was still there, papers stacked with surgical precision, but it was the framed photo on the shelf that stopped her cold. It wasn't a picture of them. It was of her father shaking Marcus's hand at the groundbreaking ceremony of Grant Automotive Labs. The caption beneath read, Partnership, Pierce Holdings, ex-Grant Industries. Her father's company. Her knees went weak. She scanned the documents on the desk. Partnership renewals, equity swaps, patents filed under her maiden name. He had built an empire around her world, using her family's connections as his foundation. The man she thought was beneath her class had quietly owned everything her family relied on, and he had never said a word. The front door clicked open. She froze. Marcus stepped in, dressed in a charcoal suit, calm as ever. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the confession. Didn't expect you to still have the key, he said quietly. She turned, tears brimming. Marcus, what did you do? He walked past her, setting down his briefcase. What you told me that morning was honest. You said you were cheating with my best friend, and there was nothing I could do. He looked up, eyes cold but steady. You were half right. Marcus, please. He raised a hand. No, you see, Amelia, love was my biggest investment. I just decided to withdraw. She trembled. You destroyed everything. No, he said softly. I just took back what was already mine. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at her. Your father's company, Pierce Holdings, is being liquidated by its new board. They accepted my buyout this morning. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He continued, his tone chillingly calm. When you told me there was nothing I could do, I realized something. Power doesn't scream, Amelia. It signs. He walked to the door, pausing as he slipped on his watch. Enjoy your freedom. You earned it. As he left, the city's skyline glowed behind him, gold and cruel, and Amelia, standing alone in the ruins of her own arrogance, finally understood the depth of what she had lost. But what Marcus didn't know was that Amelia wasn't done yet. Broken, yes, but surrender was not in her nature, and in the shadows of her humiliation, something darker was beginning to stir. A desperate resolve that would soon turn his revenge into a new kind of war. For days, Amelia vanished from sight. The woman who once glimmered on every social platform, photographed in champagne lounges and rooftop galas, became a ghost in her own city. The press had already caught the scent of blood. Headlines whispering about the Evans Group collapse and the silent buyout orchestrated by Grant Holdings. Her phone buzzed with unread messages from former friends, suddenly too busy, and her sister Clara had stopped answering entirely. Even Evan, the man she'd risked everything for, had fled the city after filing bankruptcy. She sat alone in a dim hotel suite on the city's north side, curtains drawn against the mocking daylight. Her reflection in the dark TV screen looked nothing like the woman Marcus once adored. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes hollow, but her mind was alive again, burning. Humiliation has a way of sharpening clarity, and for the first time in years, Amelia saw herself not as a victim, but as someone who'd been outplayed. She replayed Marcus's calm voice in her head. Every action has an investor, and every investor wants returns. His revenge hadn't been explosive. It had been quiet, deliberate, corporate. He had dismantled her life like a chess master capturing pawns while she bragged about wearing the crown. But she wasn't going to vanish that easily. She had something Marcus didn't expect. Knowledge. During their marriage, Marcus had trusted her with more than she realized. Late nights when he reviewed merger drafts, she had watched him scribble notes in a small leather-bound ledger, a private code of investments, mergers, and offshore transfers. He thought she wasn't paying attention, but she had been. She had memorized names, locations, and digits. That ledger wasn't just a diary of wealth. It was the blueprint of his empire. By the 5th day of isolation, her humiliation had fermented into focus. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. Leon Vickers, a tech journalist known for corporate exposés. "Leon, it's Amelia Grant," she said softly. He hesitated, clearly surprised. "The same Amelia who used to hang up on me when I called for statements? I'm calling with something better than statements. I'm calling with a story that'll break this city." He chuckled. "You mean Marcus Grant's story?" She smiled faintly, her voice regaining a trace of its old confidence. "Exactly." The next morning, Amelia met Leon in a quiet cafe near Wabash Avenue. She wore sunglasses and a navy coat, her expression poised but heavy with restrained emotion. Leon leaned across the table. "You realize going after Marcus is suicide, right? That man's a ghost. He hides behind shell corporations tighter than federal agencies." She slid a folded piece of paper toward him. "Not if you know where to look." Leon unfolded it, eyes widening. Names, codes, dates, all from Marcus's private transactions. "Where did you get this?" She met his gaze steadily. "From the man who told me I had nothing left to lose." That night, while Leon began connecting dots and calling sources, Amelia returned to her suite, pacing like a woman walking between guilt and resolve. She knew Marcus didn't deserve to lose everything, but she also knew he needed to feel something. She wanted him shaken. She wanted to see that calm, unreadable face finally crack. What she didn't know was that Marcus was already watching her. Through a private security feed linked to his company's asset monitoring system, he saw a flagged access alert, a digital footprint tied to his old ledger file. The alert came from a downtown IP address linked to a journalist. Jordan, his operations chief, entered the office with a concerned look. "Someone's poking around your old files. It's external. Probably media." Marcus's expression didn't change. He simply said, "Amelia." Jordan frowned. "You think she's trying to leak your holdings?" "I don't think," Marcus replied quietly. "I know." He turned toward the window, the city glinting below like a chessboard under moonlight. "Let her play her move. I want to see how much she thinks she understands." Back in the cafe the following evening, Leon returned with updates. "You weren't lying. Some of this data connects Grant Holdings to Titan Infrastructure and Aurora Tech. But Amelia, there's a problem. None of these ties are illegal. If anything, this looks like what? Like he built a clean empire. You might make him more powerful by exposing it. This story doesn't destroy Marcus. It glorifies him." Her heart sank. "You're saying I can't hurt him?" Leon shrugged. "Unless you've got dirt, real dirt, there's nothing here but brilliance." That night, Amelia sat by the window overlooking Lake Michigan. The wind howled against the glass, and her reflection blurred with raindrops. She realized she wasn't just fighting a man. She was fighting her own blindness, the blindness that had made her underestimate him. Then a memory surfaced, one she had buried. Months before the confession, she had walked into his study late at night and found Marcus staring at an old photograph. The two of them during their first apartment days, sitting on a threadbare couch, surrounded by moving boxes. She had laughed and said, "You really keep that old picture?" He had smiled faintly. "It reminds me that everything valuable starts small, even mistakes." Now sitting in the dim glow of her suite, she whispered to herself, "I was his biggest mistake." The realization burned. For the first time, her revenge felt hollow. She had lost not just her marriage but the respect of the only man who had ever seen her completely. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at 10 p.m. You're not the only one with secrets." Her breath caught. The sender's initials, M.G. Marcus. She stared at the message, pulse quickening. After everything he'd done, after destroying her reputation, her finances, her lover, he was reaching out. But why now? Was he calling her to end it, or to make her an offer she couldn't refuse? Rain fell like whispered judgment across the glass roof of the old conservatory restaurant on Lakeshore Drive. The place was nearly empty, its candlelight reflections quivering against walls of ivy and glass. At precisely 10 p.m., Amelia walked in, drenched, exhausted, and yet somehow radiant beneath the dim amber lights. She wore no makeup, no mask. The woman who once lived for appearance now carried only the weight of truth. Marcus sat alone in a corner booth, suit crisp, demeanor unreadable. The faint glimmer of his wristwatch caught the light as he stirred his drink slowly, eyes fixed on her as though he had been expecting this exact moment all along. She approached cautiously, her heels tapping softly on the marble floor. "You chose quite the dramatic setting," she murmured, sliding into the seat across from him. "Old habits," Marcus said simply. This was the first place we ever talked about forever. The words hit her like a memory she didn't want. She looked around, the same window where he had once taken her hand and promised a life built on trust. Now that same window reflected two strangers who had torn each other to pieces. "Why did you ask me here?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her face, the same way he once studied blueprints, patiently, meticulously. "Because," he said finally, "I wanted to see if there was anything left of the woman I fell in love with." She swallowed hard. "You mean the woman you destroyed?" He gave a small, humorless smile. "No, Amelia, I didn't destroy you. I removed the things you used to hide from yourself." Her eyes burned. "You humiliated me. You bankrupted Evan. You ruined my family's company." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but edged. "Evan bankrupted himself. Your father sold a company he didn't understand. I just stopped financing illusions." Amelia looked away, her reflection wavering in the rain-blurred glass. "You did it because I hurt you." "I did it," Marcus replied, "because you told me there was nothing I could do." She blinked, remembering the words that started it all. Her arrogance, her certainty, her cruelty. Now, sitting before him, she realized Marcus had never raised his voice, never sought vengeance in chaos. His revenge had been surgical, swift, precise, absolute. But there was something different about him tonight. His usual composure was shadowed by something heavier, fatigue perhaps, or regret. "Leon Vickers reached out to me," he said suddenly. She tensed. "Then you know He nodded. "I know you tried to leak my holdings. It was clever, Amelia. You learned faster than I thought you could. But that's not why I called you here." "Then why?" He reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. "This is the deed to your father's estate, and the documents restoring your trust fund. I've transferred everything back." She froze. "What?" "I don't want your family's name attached to mine anymore. Consider it closure." Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Every signature, every notarized stamp, it was all there. The empire he'd dismantled, piece by piece, he was now returning to her. "I don't understand," she whispered. "After everything, why?" Marcus looked up, eyes steady but soft. "Because revenge has an expiration date, and because somewhere in all the wreckage, I remembered that the man I used to be wouldn't have wanted to end your story this way." Tears welled in her eyes. "You think giving me my money back erases what you did?" He shook his head. "No, but it lets you decide who you'll be after it." The silence between them stretched, filled only by the soft clinking of rain against glass. For a moment, neither of them were husband or wife, victor or victim. They were just two people staring at the ghosts of what could have been. Finally, Amelia whispered, "Do you still hate me?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "No, I stopped hating you the moment I realized you never understood the difference between power and peace." She looked at him, eyes red. "And do you have peace now?" He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Almost." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "You once said there was nothing I could do. But you were wrong, Amelia. I could forgive you. That's the one thing you can't undo. She reached for his hand impulsively, desperate, trembling. Marcus, please. I never wanted it to end like this. He paused, his fingers brushing hers for a brief, electric second before pulling away. Neither did I. But sometimes love isn't a home, it's a lesson. He left without looking back, stepping into the rain that gleamed like shards of glass beneath the streetlights. Amelia sat motionless, tears falling freely now. On the table before her, the folder remained open, the documents glistening under candlelight beside the untouched wine she'd ordered out of habit. Outside, Marcus walked toward his car, his reflection mirrored in puddles that rippled with every step. He could have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow, because for all his victories, there was no satisfaction in dismantling something he once loved. As his car pulled away, Amelia pressed her hand against the cold window pane, whispering into the emptiness. You were always the only one who saw me. And somewhere in the distance, Marcus looked at the skyline, his empire stretching before him, powerful but silent, and murmured, that was the problem. The rain fell harder, the city lights blurred into gold and gray, and in that sprawling metropolis of power, pride, and punishment, two hearts that once shared a home now carried the same quiet truth. He had crushed her forever, but in doing so, he had broken himself too. 6 months later, winter blanketed Chicago in pale gray, and the city that once echoed Amelia Grant's laughter barely remembered her name. But in a quiet co-working space overlooking the frozen river, she sat behind a modest desk, typing beneath the hum of fluorescent light. The woman who once measured worth in wealth now measured it in hours, worked, contracts closed, and trust earned. Her new company, Haven Legal Advisory, specialized in financial rehabilitation for small businesses. Ironically, it was Marcus's own former firm that had inspired her to build it. She had studied every clause, every ledger, every mistake. What once symbolized humiliation now served as her education. For the first time in her adult life, Amelia worked not to be seen, but to build something that lasted. One evening, as the last employee left, she received a letter by courier. The envelope bore no return address, just the familiar initials MG. Her breath caught. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Amelia, you rebuilt faster than anyone expected. I'm not surprised. I've learned that power without peace is poverty in disguise. If Haven ever needs a partner, call me. No contracts, just conscience. M. She read it twice, tears gathering silently. For a long moment she stared out at the city that had once been her battlefield. Somewhere out there, Marcus was still building, still leading, still haunted. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her planner. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder that growth sometimes begins with ruin. Across town, inside the boardroom of Grant Holdings, Marcus sat in silence as the directors debated. The company's valuation had hit record highs, but investors whispered about his detachment, his long absences, his refusal to chase risk. He had won everything, yet the thrill of victory had vanished with the echo of her last words. When the meeting ended, he walked to the glass window, watching snow swirl over the city lights. Somewhere she was rebuilding. Somewhere she was free. He smiled faintly, not with triumph, but with the weary acceptance of a man who finally understood what real wealth meant. Not control, not revenge, but release. And as the snow fell over the sleeping city, both Marcus and Amelia, two souls once bound by pride and pain, quietly began their separate peace.